Hi, my name is Aves Hamid Khan, and today I will be presenting the paper Tracing Design, which explores practitioner accounts of design value, documentation, and practices. I am presenting on behalf of my colleagues, Dr. Stephen Snow and Dr. Ben Matthews from the University of Queensland. This paper is part of a broader research program that explores how to make design-early practices, tools, and methods easier to understand and use by non-designers. As design and design-early practices become increasingly popular across industry, there is a growing interest in understanding the value of design. Industry and academia have made competing attempts to study design, acknowledging the importance of design as a competitive instrument, but with little agreement on how it is understood, communicated, and mobilized. We take the question of how is the value of design understood, documented, and communicated in industry and academia to frame our study, which takes a bottom-up approach engaging practitioners. Our study primarily focuses on user experience designers. However, lessons have broader implications to contemporary design practice as a whole. We start by presenting some key challenges faced by contemporary design. Firstly, design has a lot of semantic baggage. It can be understood and used in language in a multitude of ways. John Heskett illustrates this by the seemingly nonsensical yet grammatically astute sentence, "Design is to design a design to produce a design," where design acts as a concept, a process, a plan, and an output. So design can mean many things within a simple conversation. Similarly, while any two design processes may share one or more manifestations, there is no single or determinate set of manifestations that will be common to all processes. Secondly, designers are evolving. Pobiner and Matthew refer to contemporary designers as hybrid designers, different from traditional designers such as architectural or industrial designers. User experience, user interface, service, product, interaction designers all have different titles, yet may be tasked to perform similar work, which can be indistinguishable for an external audience. This new age of designers does not always require the same levels of formal training or tertiary education as more traditional designers did to practice their craft. Lastly, design has gained a lot of traction, especially within management and innovation, due to the packaging of design-early practices as design thinking. Even though design thinking has had its fair share of criticism due to its systematic, oversimplified rendition of design practice, it is often still seen as the same as design to a non-design audience. If we were to visually map out a very simplistic classical view of reflective design-early practice inspired by Schoon's notion of reflective practice, where design-early work happens through the conversation between a designer and the materials of design, we can say that the dialogue is mediated by enablers, the practices, the mindsets, the methods, tools. Some of this communication may be visible to non-designers, such as the use of the methods, tools, whereas others remain obfuscated or invisible, such as the designer's mindset, motivations, or practices. Similarly, the understanding of design from a non-designer's perspective might be limited to the lens of design thinking. The holistic appreciation of this model, that is, the conversation as a whole, can be argued as where the value of design may be created. However, this mapping underrepresents some of the rich, contextual, pragmatic considerations that a designer negotiates with in daily practice. These include the likes of KPI pressures, organizational social structures and hierarchies, degree of influence within the organization, the designer's motivation, ability to communicate concepts, negotiation of organizational politics, and firefighting timelines and budget constraints, to name a few. We contend that even though this may be a very simplistic sequential mapping of an otherwise very complex practice, when tracing design, we should be able to document and defend its value by conceptualizing it broadly, speaking to the considerations of where design practices happen, augmenting the idealized view of design practice. That said, design does still thrive in this chaos, even after being subjected to the organizational pressures. So to uncover some of the pragmatics of the ways in which practitioners negotiate how design is understood, documented, and communicated in situ, we took a bottom-up approach to study accounts of design and from the designers and their practices. We conducted a series of semi-structured interviews with early career user experience designers, all of whom had received a formal tertiary education in design. Their experience ranged from 1 to 5 years. The rationale for engaging early career designers was that they may still have relatively active hands-on roles in design as they are still in the early stages of their careers. They will not be so deeply embedded within the organizations that they cannot still draw upon concepts and lessons from their education, and that they can provide a more recent contrast to how design is being taught and practiced. The interviews were guided by questions that were framed as prompts. These covered aspects such as how participants understand and describe design. So how would they describe design to a designer? How would they describe design to a non-designer? How is the value of design communicated within the organization? What documentation practices do they use as designers to capture their work? What learning channels are used to further their design knowledge? What reflexive practices are in place to revisit their work? And so returning to our initial research question of how is design understood, documented, and communicated, we clustered findings into 4 themes that respond to this. These are design value communication strategies, knowledge channels and learning interests, documentation process and reflexive practices, and resource constraints and challenges. In terms of communication strategies, we uncovered instances where practitioners relied on customer complaints to passively pressurize management into taking on board their advice, arguing, what is the point in communicating the value of design? Another instance emerged where a participant stated they simply relabeled their function to UX. We pitched it as UX, we didn't even say UX design, distancing themselves from the baggage of design semantics. And that UX was a relatively new, flashy term at that time. A successful communication strategy was co-opting non-design stakeholders into design-early practices by demonstrating the value of design-early work by having stakeholders experience it for themselves in their own work. In terms of knowledge sources, participants preferred blogs, podcasts, and even Instagram pages as they provided accessible, bite-sized practical information about how theoretical concepts are executed. One participant commented about how an Instagram post about the 8 principles of making good buttons was more practical than what was being taught about the broader concepts of visibility and contrast within the educational setting. On reflection, one practitioner highlighted that they never revisit their designs simply because they didn't have to and it wasn't expected of them, saying, I've never had to. Most of them are pump and dump proof of concept type things. While another suggested there is no point of documenting design if you can't communicate it, if nobody listens to you anyway. Talking about how their manager was not interested in the details of their work, so they performed design-early tasks because the organization was expected to produce artifacts of design without really having any ownership or use for them. Or simply not having the time to learn, document, or even talk to users. Design is pragmatic and should live in the world. Returning to Herbert Simon's definition of design, it is devising courses of actions that change existing states to preferred ones. It does not come with a disclaimer if time and money permits. So reflecting on that, we present a summary of all the different themes with selective challenges presented here to respond to our question. I would like to leave the audience with a series of provocations about what we can do from these lessons. So if Instagram posts and Medium blogs are more successful at engaging practitioners and bridging the gap between research and practice, should academia embrace more digestible, adaptive, bite-sized formats for dialogue with practitioners? Are there ways to explore the materiality of our methods, practices, and tools so that they are self-documenting of the evidence of their value captured in the moment, which can then be shared and communicated with external stakeholders? What can we do to honor the fundamentals, the cores of design-early practice as the world around design continues to evolve and grow? Thank you for listening. We encourage you to read the full paper and would be delighted to hear your feedback and thoughts about what we as a community can do to address this wicked problem. Feel free to reach out to us and continue the conversation. And thank you for listening.